it's good that you mentioned that. We're going to talk now about the silly season, the 13 teams, the cars that they're driving, the chassis that they're going to have. We've seen all 13, but, they haven't actually launched yet. And you talk about the driving lineups and what the team's hopes are for next season. We're going to start right off the top with SAR USA in the SAR Eagle. And wow, what a nice car. Absolutely, Dan. This is going to be the nicest looking car on the grid next season, bar none. I like the way it looks. I think on the higher speed ovals, this thing could be the car to beat. I think there's going to be a lot of people going to have a lot of problems with the SAR Eagles running them down to lap them, because I think this car is going to be far and away over everyone else. I do like what they have going with the sides with this car. It's a nice looking car. It's nothing too outlandish, even though it does have those side things. I'm not sure what those are supposed to do, but regardless, though, it's a very clean car. It's obviously pretty fast from the test session they did with it, and looks like they're gonna have a fairly strong driving lineup because they're gonna have Tony Durbin on there. And one of the other cars for sure is going to be Ethan Everett. And Ethan Everett, he's not 18 yet, but I haven't seen a racing category that he hasn't totally dominated hand over fist. And he's getting ready to make his Arla debut in a couple of weeks' time at the newly rechristened Dwyer Speed Park in Minnesota. That's a track Benny Dwyer used to race on, and his family bought the circuit and is spicing it up, and they're holding an Arla race there this year. That's right. And possibility for the Master Cup Series to run there in the future? I think it's rather high. I wouldn't be too surprised if we are there within the next couple of years. It would be great to see, though, because this is a track that, even though the Master Cup Series hasn't raced there since 1985, would be good to see. I do think that it would be a great thing to see, because this is a track, of course, that Benny Dwyer, a lot of stories around that he would drive this track even in the snow, in the wintertime, when in just anything, basically. And he ran a lot of sports car races there as well. And, okay, and the other car, the third car in that team, the 31 car, it's going to go to either Gary Edwards or Drew Eisenman, and there is a case for both drivers here, but I think the team has made it kind of clear that whichever driver doesn't get the spot is going to be the lead driver at Tremwell, which is who we're going to come to next. Camelot Racing is going to be fielding the Tremwell. They've done a deal with SAR to run the Tremwell, which is another brand of the SAR Motor Company. The Tremwell Knight, not as aggressive a design as the Eagle, but still looks like a solid car. Right, well, we haven't really gotten into the fourth car for SAR USA, but I don't think that anyone's really going to take that car other than George Dennis, so, sorry. Don't worry about it. And Camelot Racing here. This is a team that really needs a big partnership like this, I think, to continue its existence. The thing with this team is that there's about, 13 drivers up for the race seats? Something like that. There's a lot of people open for them. Gary Edwards, Drew Eisenman, Chris Johans, Scott Stoidler, Dustin Peterson. Of course, he's in the junior series. Matt Taylor, even. Franz Redlick. I find this one a little hard to believe. Tyrone Stanley and Kurt Walker. Can't imagine King Arthur wanting Stanley or Walker back after what they've been doing this year, but they're still rumored to this team anyway. Of course, Ryan Araki is rumored to this team, and so is Justin Brooks and Damian Snyder as well. Of course, Damian Snyder was informed a day ago that he will not be back with SAR USA. In fact, Snyder may be one of those drivers who loses a spot in the series because there's not going to be any rides open for him, and he'll have to run for the Independence Trophy. Who's most likely to take this spot, or one of these three cars? I think, Dan, that one of these three cars is going. I think the only one we're absolutely positive about is Chris Johans is going to be in one of these cars. In fact, we don't know any of the other cars yet. I can't even say who's really a favorite, but I do think that if Gary Edwards or Drew Eisenman will be in one of these cars. And possibly, whichever one doesn't get the SAR USA seat, Edwards or Eisenman is going to be the lead driver in, I think, the 19 car. And that brings us to another rumour about Dale Roswell, which we'll get to later on. Of course, the car numbers here, 19, 23, and 24. Of course, we believe the number 20 is going to be the part-time car, but they've only released the car numbers. And seeing as Clever Media and the Schaefer Group do seem to have deals with Camelot Racing extending into next year, looks like those numbers are going to be staying the same. FLR Motorsports are going to come to next. The de facto Lennard factory team for a number of years, even though they haven't really been. Now the factory's going to have a bit more involvement here, and the silly season here really isn't that silly. Not really. We're pretty sure that David Krikorin will step into the 9 car again, and the 59 car, of course, in order to promote Lennard's new the 959 engine. With in touring cars that they're and performance cars, excuse me, and the Lennard 59, which is a I really don't know what to best describe it. A dune buggy, something like that. It's something like that. It's a ATV. There we go. The 59 ATV that they've that Lennard's just put out, and I think that the 9 and 59 are going to be driven by David Krikorin, and of course TM Lights driver Jacques Bouvier will be in the 59. Where does this leave Dale Roswell? Well, actually that team's next. And I think this team's going to have some decent hopes because they're not changing the model. It's going to be the same Q9 as this year, basically. Which is a little bit of a conservative car, but we'll have to see how it goes. Okay, we're talking about Dale Roswell. The biggest rumor is that he's going to Mallister Motorsports, an old team, one of the old stalwart teams, and that needs a bit of an uplift. And Dale Roswell's most likely going here to the 17 car. That's the rumor. That's the leading rumor, but there's also a lot of strange rumors about this team. In fact, I heard one that Alexis Rainsford is going to this team, and I said, well, bollocks to that. Mallister's going to be running the Gasnier Dragoon, which doesn't entirely surprise me, but it will probably surprise other people. For Mallister to be going away from from an American nameplate, but I think one thing people have to realize is that there's a very large Gasnier plant not too far from the Mallister Motorsports shop. Then once you see that, it won't surprise you. Well, we think Justin Brooks is going to be here next season because, quite frankly, I don't think Garth McAllister is happy with him, but I don't think he sees a better option. I think that's the quandary he's in right now. And, Brooks is a solid driver. He'll probably do exactly what the car is capable of, and so by that, he's probably not a bad research and development driver. Dale Roswell could probably mentor him and get him a little bit further up the grid, and we'd have no idea about the last 2 cars. Chris Allen could probably be in the 22 car. And the 4th car, kind of like FLR Motorsports, we haven't heard anything about it. In fact, we're not even sure if it'll be used by McAllister at all, but if it is, it's going to be by Garth McAllister Jr., almost certainly. McAllister's hopes for next season? Well, with a lineup of Brooks and Roswell and some other random driver who we have no idea yet, I think that this team is probably going to do better than it did last year, and this year. So, they're going to be a little bit up the grid further, and I think that we will see 2 of them locked into the field on a regular basis. Okay, a team that we've left out for a while, Flash Racing, and this team has been kind of quiet in the silly season front, and I think that's because they've already selected their whole driver lineup, and are just waiting to announce it. Leonid Roderick and Arto Kekin are going to be back. Palmer Styles is going to be starting his own team. We'll get to him later. And the 3rd car, which will be the number 44... who's going to be in this car? Well, this is going to be the most sought-after car in the off-season because the Inglesby Flashback is looking very fast in the road courses so far, Dan. It's 2-0. Of course, Roderick at Brands Hatch and Otto Kekin, and of course, winning the Carliella Grand Prix. And I have a feeling, though, I have this feeling in my bones that we could be seeing a TM Junior Series driver in here. I'm thinking actually Dustin Peterson might be have the best chance at this 44 car. Also, don't rule out Matthias Taub as well. He might have a couple of runs on this car, although Taub does seem to be in cahoots with Gasnier, I do believe, and that means Taub could be in a program to head over to McAllister at some time in the future. But of course not next year, because Taub's basically said that. Of course, Matthias Taub, the big name coming out of the Carriala GP from this year, said he's going to run the Junior Series first. The number 44 car, we don't really know who the driver is, but we do know something, is that Flash Racing intends to use the 4th car very often. Oh, as much as they can, and they said that Scott Hamilton's going to get several runs in the car. Now, he's been a name rumored to the 44 car, but the team's denied it, and Scott has as well. They said that they don't think Scott's ready. Matt Taylor, they said, is not going to be returning to that car, much to the surprise of everyone else. And even the names Scott Stoidler and Lewis Kingston, of all people, have come up in name, well, for that 44 car. We don't really know who's going to get it yet. We'll have to wait for the announcement. What do you think their hopes are for next season? Well, the Inglesby car for the past couple of years has not been very good. They've had Inglesby's Flash Racing has typically had a very strong driver lineup, but the thing is that the Inglesby flashback chassis is just not very good. Now with the 2010 open regulations, the regulations opened a bit, I think that this could really help this team out a lot. Okay, going to Hodgers Walter Racing, the Colton Morrell Corsair. How does this car look? Well, it's basically the same thing as the Nova, really. Okay then. The driving lineup. We know it's going to be Alan Hodgers in the 13 and most likely Adrian Devereaux in the 26 car. What about the 3rd and 4th car? No rumors about either one of them, but we do think that the last car is going to be occupied by Robert Dorian, who is currently running for the Team Lights Championship. Of course, Jacques Bouvier has sort of locked up that title right now. But Dorian's second in the standings, and we think he's going to get several runs in the Hodgers Walter Racing car. And the 3rd car, the 3rd full-time car. Who's going to be in that car for next year, Lance? Give us your prediction. I don't know. I really don't have a clue, but I think Matt Taylor might have a shot here. But also, don't count out Ryan Naraki and Avery Holtzman as well. They have been talking to Alan Hodges about getting a ride here. Tom Delgado might, but I think Delgado's common rage fests and Alan Hodges' demeanor won't really mix well. Because Alan Hodges is probably one of the last people that you like to go after. And I think he's made it very clear that Mike Whitmore's not going to be back with the team, and Scott Stoidler's chances of returning to this team don't seem to be very good as well, because Alan Hodges is very big on team unity here. And, yeah, that is pretty important to Alan. Well, the Vulpi Racing team, now this is the team that's got the biggest question mark on it of all, even more so than Corsa. We'll get to Corsa later as well, but Vulpi Racing team, 3 cars, no Julian Nasova next year. We'll talk about Nasova later as well. And possibly no Alexis Rainsford. Now, why would there be no Alexis at the Vulpi Racing team? Well, first of all, this is the Jeff Sesnick team. It's going to be rebranded for next season. Because, of course, Cyril Vulpi, who I think is the, the 3rd son of the person who started the Vulpi Motor Company in '96. Cyril Vulpi is the son. Cyril Vulpi, he's a bit of a racing driver himself, but the thing is that he's not new to team ownership. He owned the old V2 team in the 1990s. That was actually a lot more successful than I thought they were going to be, and a very well managed team, just not very well funded. But that aside, Cyril Vulpi's a pretty good team boss. I wouldn't put it against him though to kind of maybe throw in a little more money to this team, and in particular, this team needs a little bit of help this season because they do seem to be struggling just a bit so far. Even though they have Alexis Rainsford something like 4th in the title run, the other cars haven't really been running as smoothly. And I do think, though, that if Alexis does take the Formula A drive, this team is going to be screwed. Because, basically, she is the best driver they've got. And, you really can't replace someone like Alexis Rainsford so easily, even though a lot of people think you can. And I think next season, if she does go to Formula A, will show that. But right now, I think that Brian Sendak is actually going to this team, and I'm not sure if they're going to keep Zach Duff, but I think they'd be insane if they didn't. And the fourth car. The fourth car is actually, I think, going to be used by Cyril Vulpi himself, because remember, he still runs 24 hours of Carriala and a few random sports car races whenever he feels like it, basically. In various series, I know he runs GTs in Europe and does so in the States as well. He just kind of races whenever he feels like. He even does some dirt racing. Now he's even gotten he got himself a dirt late model, and we went tooling around with a couple of dirt late models and down in over in at the Eldora track just a couple of weeks ago. And Team EFR. We didn't talk about the Vulpi racing car. It's basically the same as this year's, you'd say. Yeah, but it has these weird duck things on the side of it towards the back. I think one of the problems they've been having is that they're getting too much heat into the rear tires, and I think it's supposed to cool them off a little bit. At least I think that's what they're for. They're not telling anybody, though. What do we think how do you think they're going to go? They're probably going to be good on the road courses, but everywhere else they might have some teething problems. Okay, Team EFR. Now, this is a car that we've seen for a long time. Because this is a car they actually tried to enter a couple years ago, the Journey. And they've spiced it up a bit, and they've got that splitter on the front, which I don't know. I kind of like the splitter, to be honest with you. It does look a little bit strange on a Master Cup Series car because we haven't seen anything like it before. But it could be their savior. Well, it's supposed to bring a lot more front downforce, yes, and that's something that they have. That's something that this car has been having problems with in testing, but ever since they put that on, that sort of cured the problem. I really don't know how, but they might have done something else to it under the hood. We know that two of the drivers are going to be Anthony Evans and Scott Bates, and that's not a bad pick. You know, you've got two drivers who are, you know, a lot older, more experienced, and two guys that I think, frankly, are going to keep the car on the road more often than not. The third car, we have no idea. We know that there's going to be some. We think that they've already chosen, but they won't announce the third driver. And the fourth driver, we're pretty sure is going to be Johnny Ada or Juan Valdez the third. We've heard. Of course, Juan Valdez, pay driver possibly, but I wouldn't put much stock on him running more than 1 or 2 races. Fair enough. Now we go to the Ocean Motorsports, which is going to be rebranded as Ocean Team STS. Pretty big relationship with STS, the automaker here, and these cars are a little bit more open than most people would think. We know for sure Todd Wodarchik's getting the boot. Where Wodarchik is going to go, I don't know. But Ocean Motorsports is going to run Stuart Sandoval. We think they're going to run Stuart Sandoval and Stan Rosenstretter. We think these two guys are a shoo-in, but we're not sure because Leon Kennison's name is merged as well. Also, the names Avery Holtzman, Shinji Tanaka has come up, and also Ryan Araki is even rumored to this team. And Lauren Roth, we're pretty sure he's staying. Well, Roth just signed on a contract extension, and he announced it just a couple days ago, so yes, he is staying. Fair enough. How does the STS look? Well, it's the same as last year's, basically. Well, this year's, I should say. I keep calling it last year's car, but yeah, it is. Well, this is STS's first year, so next year will be the second. So it looks the same as this year's car. It could be very strong on the super speedways, but everywhere else, who knows? All right, and now we come to the car maker that struggled more than anyone else this season, Star Motorsports and Nemoto. Now, they want Japanese drivers, they've said, and I think the first name that comes to my mind is Azuma Kazuyama in the TM Junior Series, and I think Kazuyama would be a great fit for this team. I think they seem to agree with you, Dan. Azuma Kazuyama's most likely going to be in one of these cars next season, and I would be surprised if they got rid of Stephanie McGlynn, but because she is performing better overall than John Parker Jr., with Parker Jr., of course, winning a race, I think that pretty much locked him in for next year, because I think that was in his contract. Win a race and you get to stay. Okay, how does the Nemoto look? I don't know, Dan. This year the Nemoto hasn't been a very good car, but John Parker Jr. and Stephanie McGlynn are both doing a fantastic job, so I wouldn't be too surprised if they tend to struggle next year as well. Okay, now we come to Corsa. Another team with a giant question mark over because we have no idea who the drivers are. Well, I think judging by that this is going to be the Aerotech team, that Enzo Medina is going to be one of the drivers. You think so? I don't think that's the obvious one, really. Do we know any of the other drivers? No, because Alonso Tosi is not contracted for the team for next year yet. At least we don't think so. We've also rumored that Zach Duff and Justin Brooks are going to be running here as well, but the team has basically said that that's not going to happen. And from what we've seen from Corsa language, if they deny it, it must be true. And in that case, they can never win. Basically, yeah. Oh dear. Power steering and what about the Corsa car? We've actually had a sneak peek at it. It's a nice looking car, don't get me wrong, but I'll be surprised if this thing is fast immediately. I think it will be fast eventually, but in the first couple of races might have some teething problems. Once they know what the car's going to do, if they test it a little bit more, I think that they could be fast, but just not fast right out of the box. They could have some problems early in the season, and that could be trouble. Power Steering Incorporated. Oh, the JD Predator. This is a neat looking car. It looks like a shark face is just pasted on the front of this thing. Of course, James Dalton and the very creative folks at Power Steering Incorporated got together with this car. It's a privateer car. This is of course, not an actual car you can go out and get, obviously. JD stands for James Dalton, who is the designer of the car, and of course, this means that it's going to be a merger of James Dalton Racing and Power Steering Incorporated, but of course using the Power Steering Incorporated name. Kurt Pliskin, we know, is going to be in this team next year. He's been performing very well this year. And Marcus Leonardo, of course, also is rumored to this team, and we think they're actually going to be using Inglesby engines next year. Well, we think. How is the Predator going to perform? Actually, this car might be pretty good, because you've got guys like Kurt Pliskin who can really throw it around on the bigger tracks, and Marcus Leonard who can, well, throw it around anywhere if he doesn't throw it into the wall first. We don't know who the other driver is going to be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a certain person named Ashby. So we kind of know what the lineup is before it's announced. Sort of, yes. What about the fourth car? Now, this is a team that's going to use the fourth car as well. And we think it's going to be Jim Kidd, who's been running an Ala for a while. We think he could make the jump in here. In fact, Jim Kidd could be one of the full-time drivers. It sort of depends on various other factors. And also, if that kid's one of the full-time drivers, and I wouldn't say that Tom Delgado could be in this team as well. And now we come to the last team, Team Russia. Well, the de facto Team Russia, anyway. Katsev Engineering. And it's pretty widely known around the garage, but it hasn't been announced yet, that Yulia Nasova and Vladimir Simonov are going to be two of the drivers, and Ivan Katsev, the team boss, wants an American driver for the third car, and that's going to be either Tom Delgado or Woody Watts. Well, you basically summed it up there. Katsev Engineering, this is a very radical design. It's got a massive front grille. It almost looks like a prototype car. Looks like a P1 car a little bit, with that front grille thing that looks like it's just going to suck you in and eat you. But, what? Suck you in and eat you? What? Oh, dear. Okay, so we think there's going to be an American in the third car, and this team's all said they're going to use the fourth car. They've said that they're going to use it, and we think that's going to be Alexei Stoyanovich, who ran the round in Russia last year, and who will run the car that Dennis Predikin drove at Indianapolis. Well, that's absolutely right. And Stoyanovich, that could be a bit of a disaster. Because he wasn't terribly fast at his home race. He was good enough to make the race, but that's about it. He just was really way in the back and was all over the road. And how does the car look? It's a very interesting design. They have these stupid exhausts coming out the back. They look nice, but what were they thinking? It just rubs off so much. It's going to rub off so much horsepower that it's going to make. Oh, forget it. I actually think, though, in order to offset that, the engine's going to be a little bit further back in the car than most others. And this team really does sound like it's going to have a lot of problems. I think that if this team actually qualifies all of its one of its cars for the first race, it'll be an absolute miracle. You're saying this basically is career suicide for Yulia Nasova. I think so, but I think she was sort of obligated to join this team anyway. But I think, in all honesty, I think she joined it because I think she wants to get out of Alexis Rainsford's shadow. And despite the two being good friends, I think it's something that it would really help Nasova along. And with the relationship between Nasova and Rainsford, do you think they could be using some Vulpi engines? Well, I don't know who'd want them. Alright then. And let's talk about the Independence Trophy, which I think is, quite honestly, the greatest thing that's happened to the series in about 15 years. Well, we know what most of them are going to be using the MA01 car, but there's going to be a couple others using the Cromwell, which is a car being used in Arla. Of course, the Cromwell is a spec car that Arla uses, and it was recently approved for Master Cup Series use. The teams that we know of, we're going to talk about only the teams that we know of. Palmer Styles is going to be running for this trophy in his own car. He's going to be now the thing is that these cars can run, 6 races? Yeah, 6 races, but only the best 4 results count. So a team can run 4 races and then just say, okay, we're going to let those results stand, which appears to be what Palmer's doing. Well, Palmer actually is going to attempt 5. We know for sure Daytona, Carbondale, Cayala, Indianapolis, and Decatur. Possibly one more, and we don't really know what the car number is, but we think he's going to be running the number 21, which is the same number as his Team Lights team, which is basically what the team is. It's his Lights team, so we think it's going to be number 21. Mitchell & Sons, they're going to be here with the 74. I think it's a good thing for them, too, because they're out to launch these past couple of seasons. Oh, they have been. Cyrus Laterza won't be back with them. We don't know what Laterza's doing, but who's going to be driving for them? Well, I've had Jared Anderson in an Arla driver, but I don't put that too highly. I wouldn't be too surprised if Tom Delgado gets a call for this car. Kelly Dawson also might get a call for this car, and so might Avery Holtzman. In fact, we don't know for this car either. But I think this car is going to be somebody who didn't get a full-time Master Cup Series ride, and they're not really in a big rush for a driver signing. Blitzkrieg Racing is going to be down here, and this has put Danny Savin's career in a bit of on hold almost, because Savin hasn't been he was confirmed to not be driving for them, but he could be driving their second car. Of course, Blitzkrieg Racing running 2 cars. Of course, all 3 teams we previously mentioned running the MA01. Blitzkrieg Racing is going to be running Thomas Duke on 4 of the high-speed ovals. This team's got an interesting stance. They're only running 4 with Thomas Duke in car 119, the first triple-digit numbered car that we know of, and of course triple-digit numbers allowed next year. It seemed kind of a stupid rule not to allow them. No one really cares, really. Thomas Duke will run the 119, and there's going to be another car, the 120. We don't know who's going to be driving that car. Could be Wesley Ellis, could be Danny Savin, could be a lot of people. Fintech. This team, they've been around for a long time, though. Of course, they've been around for quite a while. They didn't run 2007, much to my surprise, but other than that, they've just shown up to the Cayala Grand Prix, and that's it. But they're slowly expanding their schedule and eventually want to become a full-time team. Yeah, they're sort of easing their way in, but they're probably easing it way too slow. These cars might actually not even show up for the 4 races anyway, but they basically have said, if you get us a good finished driver, we'll swap out one of the guys you currently have. But right now, it's going to be Esko Cascella and Mika Sivinen, because, of course, Edvin Lisko will be running the GRL in the 09-10 season. And speaking of that, congratulations of the GRL. Congratulations to Sylvester Salvatore, who finally locked up his championship, his first GRL championship. And he, of course, Corsa said that, even though we're going to give a ride to the GRL champion starting next year, we're going to start with this year. So Salvatore will get a ride in the Ocean Motorsports STS in one of the couple of the races later this year, possibly Japan. That's a great thing for Salvatore. A great thing for his career mostly. But Cascella and Sivinen, this is not a bad lineup here, but Cascella's a little bit on the crash-worthy side. He does seem to get himself into a lot of incidents in Indianapolis, he was a bit of a moving chicane. So I don't know. I think Sivanen's going to be the stronger of these two. And JD McDermott Racing, and I like the attitude this team has. They're gonna run some mostly American rounds. Sponsorship be damned. That's basically what they said. We're gonna run the American rounds regardless of whether or not we have sponsors or not. And we know they're gonna be the '69 car, possibly another one. And I think one of the drivers for this team could be James West, but I would be surprised if that was the case. Do we know who the driver's gonna be? No, not really, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was Colin Evans, possibly. I think Colin might be one of them, and the other driver, who knows. But I've only heard Colin Evans' name pop up once, and so I don't think that's true at all. I think M&J Racing is going to be, it's an Arla team, obviously, going to be running a couple races with the Cromwell. The first team we know not using the MA01. Possibly with Allie Riggs, the much derided Allie Riggs. Well, Allie Riggs, reject of the year, I think, sewn up. Ouch. A little hard to say that right now. Of course, M&J Racing and Allie Riggs, how do you think that package is going to go? Allie Riggs has not shown that she can handle these Master Cup Series cars, which are a little bit lighter, a little bit more fickle on some tracks, and also cars that require a little bit more of a careful driving style, which very clearly doesn't have. And I don't know. This team could be making a serious run, but they could also be a massive joke. We really don't know how they're gonna do. It's gonna all depend on if the Cromwell is up to speed with the MA01 or not. In fact, the Cromwell might actually be a faster car. Who knows? Do any of the independent teams actually have a shot of winning a race or snagging the odd top 10 or 2? If any of them, I think the Blitzkrieg Racing team is in the best position to do that, because they're already an established team, and they're not doing bad this year, but you know they are sort of sliding back through the field. Any other teams that could be making a run at the Independence Trophy? Team Thunder might be back, and of course they had a partnership with FLR Motorsports that went horribly wrong, and I think Troy Griffith will be back, and possibly Bob Steffens as well. That'll be good to see. Troy, maybe Anthony Griffith, and of course Bob. They've been struggling in Arlo this year, but they have shown that they have the speed to do well. They have sponsorship, we think, in place if they're going to run, and is that all we know of? Yeah, that's all we know for sure, but we have a couple more rumored teams. Is that the Hurricane Motorsports operation? Yeah, the Hurricane team. Well, there was a rumor they were going to run, but that sort of went down the gurgler. Well, that seems to be all for the silly season, and now on to talk about Talladega practice. It's pretty refreshing to see the Hodgers Walter cars back at the top of the charts. Well, Alan Hodgers and Scott.